Am I audible, everyone? Alina, am I audible? Yeah? Okay. Ajay, turn on your camera. Everyone, please. अजय कहाँ बैठा है तू? हाँ? योर होम टाउन? पीछे वो आसमान दिख रहा है क्या? अच्छा, ये वॉलपेपर. ओके, ऑल राइट. Any doubt from the previous class? Other people, please turn on your cameras. Aritro, here, here, here. Roman, Aman, Ritik, Hardik. All right. So far we have discussed all the other except for SHGs, right? So I think we were about to start. We are expected to do this today. So let's try to finish this as well as regulatory bodies. And then let's see whether we can start with the governance or not. So as you can see, the name self-help group itself gives you a lot of hint as to what they might be meant for. Correct? It is a group of people who come together to help themselves because there is no one to help them. And that is why they sort of are forced to join hands together, because whatever mechanisms that exist in the society, they refuse to help them. And specifically, when people ask the question why SHG has so much of focus on women, the answer is in understanding story of Sita, who happens to be a rural woman married into a family, and her husband is a drunkard. So he is an alcoholic. And you can't say that the story does not strikes or rings the bell in everyone's mind. Probably we all have in the immediate family member, or maybe as our daily help in our home, who women who basically belongs to a rural area, and she's forced into domestic help as a domestic help because her husband does not works anywhere, and he takes up all the savings. He's diluting all the assets that the family had. Now the question is, there are 2-3 options for Sita. One of the option is that she might be uneducated to begin with. She can, let's say, she knows how to, she has some basic skill like sewing. She needs a machine so that she can take up some freelancing assignment. For that, she requires money, which her family refuses to offer, even if they have. And in most cases, they don't have 30,000 rupees, which is 20,000 rupees, which is needed to buy that machine. So obviously, option number 1 is to go to the banks. The banks will ask Sita, okay, of course, we are ready to give you. What is the guarantee that we are going to be repaid? And Sita will say, my hard work, isn't it sufficient? And the bank official will say that this is not how it works. You will have to give us some property papers. And Sita goes back and realizes that there is no property on her name. So while her husband, who is on the verge of collapse, financial collapse, is about to become a mendicant, the problem is that he will be able to secure the loan because all the asset is in his name. Patriarchy undermining the entrepreneurial capability of Sita. So the second option that she is left with is to go to the rich money lender, which is depicted in our Bollywood movies, SHG, and go for an unsecured informal loan. When Sita goes there, because she is denied the loan from the banking channels, formal lending, she goes there because Sita is uneducated. The terms and conditions of the repayment that is revealed to her seems like she will not, even if she makes the best out of that machine, she will not be able to repay the loan. because the interest is around 30 to 35%, which means if she takes the loan of 20,000, probably equal amount will go every year as an interest payment, which is like 3 to 4 times the amount that she would be paying to a formal banking channel. Now, there are still lakhs of women trapped in this vicious cycle where the intersectionality, multiple deprivations work simultaneously. Now, if I tell you on top of that, that Sita happens to be a Dalit woman, now imagine the problems that she might be facing apart from just not getting the loan. For example, her inability to find a work even as a domestic help, because the untouchability and caste system will not allow her to become a cook, who has a higher salary as compared to the maid who sweeps the floor. And so, realizing this, the current Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Muhammad Yunus, went through multiple examples when he was working in Bangladesh, and he realized that there is no one to support multiple Sitas in Bangladesh. And that's when it occurred to her that while one Sita will not be able to get because right now she is passing through a bad phase, what if I create a group of 20 such Sitas in the same village who know each other? And while one Sita might not have the ability to buying a sewing machine, if 20 Sitas combine, each of them can contribute 1,000 rupees. And right now, because Sita is in the dire need of money, can all of them be convinced to pay Sita as of now the loan that has to be repaid in 1 year with minimal interest? Money will come back. At the same time, Sita will have her own independence. At the same time, what we can take as a guarantee from Sita is to teach the rest of the 19 women how to sew using her own machine. So this is the cost that she will have to pay, which she is ready to pay. Hard work is something that she has in plenty. That's the confidence that she has, because of which she went to take the loan. So she said, if you give me money, I will teach all of the women. So you can see through self-help group, you have targeted a lot of the evils that the society faces. Number one, that you have been able to help the most vulnerable section of the society, most vulnerable in terms of society, in terms of finances. Then secondly, you have been able to develop skill at one stroke, at one go, in a group, which through the state initiatives would be the last one to develop the skills. So skill generation is a direct impact of the self-help groups. At the same time, you have sort of persuaded the rest of the 20 women to continue saving, because now they can directly see the impact of saving. Small savings combined into the pool. So initially, this is how the idea of self-help group started. So NABARD started it in India after the experiments were done in 70s in Bangladesh. So it started in 1980s. How India combined the self-help groups with other mechanisms is very unique. So for example, in India, what we did uniquely was to integrate and incorporate the self-help groups into various official policy measures. So for example, now once Sita and 19 of the women, let's say they are able to develop skill, they have some pool, and now pool keeps on rising because everyone is contributing. Now next year, apart from Sita, there is some another woman who needs a help. She was also helped, and she had some skill which other women needed, and slowly and gradually in 1 or 2 years, the rest of the women in the village, they are obviously automatically convinced to join the group. But still, one thing that they don't have is that they're still bound by the lack of capital. Now, while earlier they did not have any kind of collateral, right now they have a lot of saving. Now this saving can be utilized to open a bank in a formal banking institution. Now this time, the banks will not deny them an opportunity, because with a single step, the bank is going to get huge savings. So for example, if each woman contributes 1,000 rupees, she contributes 12,000 rupees in a year, And if that SHG has 20 women, now multiply 20 by 12. Now it is not a small sum, it is a 2.5 lakh rupees, which a village branch of any corporate government bank cannot ignore. So now the bank certainly becomes interested. Ki, please Sita, come to us. Because earlier when Sita went, Sita had only 1,000 rupees. Now Sita goes along with 19 other people. So what bank has to show is that we have 20 new bank accounts and we have one bank account for SHG which has 2.5 lakh rupees. So bank is able to show financial inclusion. Government is able to bring 20 women at one go on the financial inclusion policy. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. Also, when government started its welfare schemes, various welfare schemes related to livelihood, related to entrepreneurship, the idea was to give confidence to the poor people to develop some kind of skill and start a micro business through microfinancing, which means these are the small finances where the interest rates are highly subsidized. And since the interest rates are highly subsidized, the possibility of the money coming back to the government is higher. Data suggested that the microfinancing for men has failed drastically, but whenever the microfinancing was done for women-led initiatives, the punctuality of the repayment was very high. And as soon as you have this kind of a data, and if you are, let's say, CMD of a SBI, I don't think there is any doubt you will issue an order, no microfinancing to men. Because it was revealed that men take the money and then they take imprudent financial decisions. Most of the men who seek microfinances, they already have pending loans. So the microfinance is utilized to repay the older loan, or rest of the men drink it and waste the money. This is a common problem. So you can see that slowly and gradually, government realized the power of SHG for microfinancing. So now if you look at all the government schemes and policies, a women-led group has the highest chances and has the lowest level of scrutiny, especially if you are in a group of women who has been operating for 1 or 2 years. If you are able to demonstrate that to the bank officials don't have to justify extending 2, 3, 4, 5 lakh rupees and going beyond also if it is a larger SHG to you, because obviously you can show, sir, dekho, hamare paas we have 20 people, and look at in last 3 years in your bank account, every month we deposit 30,000 rupees. So if we have been doing for last 3 years, then of course one thing that you are assured of, for next 3 years, these 30,000 rupees will keep on flowing into your bank. And the loan that you are extending to us as an SHG has an EMI of only 20,000 rupees. So aap isme se kaatte rehna. So the financial prudence that women as a group have demonstrated is immense, which gave the confidence to the state to sort of institutionalize the state and SHG interlinkage to solve multiple problems that the society faces. Is this making sense to everyone? Any doubts so far? Aritro, can a discussion go without your doubt? What happened? All good? Till so far, okay. So let's see how SHGs benefit and what is the multidimensional benefit of the SHGs. Just 1 second. All right. So when you look at the benefits of SHG, let's analyze the benefit of SHG in form of 2 dimensions. One is its impact on the target group, the vulnerable section of the society, and another dimension is its impact on the kind of values that SHG bring on the table. So it's not objectifiable. it is something that can be conversationally understood, which seems rational. But the impact on target group can be easily seen and demonstrated as well. So let's understand the impact of SHGs on target group first, and then let's see what are the impact on them. So for example, let's say its impact on women. Now, one of the impacts that you can clearly see is that they immediately are incentivized to save the money. So generally women are inclined to save money more than men on an average, but when you become a part of SHG, it sort of becomes an obligation to save. So initially you might have helped your dear and near and dear ones in times of just if someone comes to you and asks for money, but now since you become a part of SHG, you know that you have to give that money, otherwise you will not be the part. So that becomes the first priority. So you can see that savings and development of financial capital becomes an immediate outcome, financial empowerment. And if you have read Marx, you can see that the only empowerment is financial empowerment. There is no social empowerment. There's nothing like that. Everything is finance. Once you command and control the finance, you have everything. So once you become financially empowered, you become independent. Once you become independent, the first thing, the first change that you observe in your life is that your dependency on your own family, either the parents or the in-laws, goes down drastically. And as soon as you decouple your personal interest from your family, you will not let go any violence in the family unnoticed, unreported, or maybe unprotested. And that is not a small change that you're seeing. Domestic violence is such a common thing in India that unless you go to people's home, you don't realize the level. Now, women being able to at least raise their voice is a drastic change. But being a part of the SHG, it doesn't stop there. Because when women go and meet once a week in SHG, they let other women know कि मेरे साथ क्या हुआ. Earlier, that platform was not available. And out of the 20 women, one has the feminist mindset. And she will say, ये मैं नहीं सुनूंगी अगली बार कि तू पिट के आई है. अगर तू पिट के आई तो मैं तेरे को SHG से निकाल दूंगी. उठा के चप्पल वहीं मारना वापस. और अगर तूने ये नहीं किया तो वी विल गो एंड रिपोर्ट इट इन द पुलिस स्टेशन, फिर तू देख लेना. We cannot tolerate such a disempowered women in SHG. This has been seen that the areas where you have high tendency of the women to form SHGs, the social evils like dowry, like domestic violence, they drastically go down. Because dowry, if you look at it, it's not an evil just which ends on the day of the marriage. It keeps on, it is like a perpetual cycle. So we have seen dowry demand 10 years after the marriage, 20 years after the marriage. So now if you're a part of SHG and now if your in-laws demand a dowry, you will immediately protest it or you will go and discuss it with the women in SHG. और वहाँ पे एक कोई दुर्गा होगी जो कहेगी अच्छा मैं चलती हूँ, रुको मैं बात करती हूँ तुम्हारे घर वालों से. अरे नहीं नहीं दीदी आप मत चलो, अरे वो क्या सोचेंगे. And if the in-laws family come to know about that this is being discussed outside the family with 20 other women, the chances of them doing this repeatedly goes down drastically. So you cannot undermine the power of SHG in social transformation. So you can see that for women, it is not just the financial empowerment, it gets them rid of a lot of evils that they face. Evils like dowry, because a lot of the women join SHGs even before they are married at an early age. They have started becoming the part of SHG. So if you have already become that part of an SHG, and then domestic violence, and then also the rates of female feticide, women saving women. Is this clear to everyone? थोड़ा गमगीन हो गया क्या माहौल? Okay, everyone is very serious. Similarly, if this can be done for women, this can be done for other vulnerable sections of the society, like scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, because they face very similar deprivations. Devoid of any kind of land titles, they don't have any asset which can act as collateral. The caste system has forced them into certain specific professions, so that they're bound by, they don't really enjoy Article 19 1G, which gives us right to freedom of trade, profession and occupation. So it is that for that purpose that we needed it to be said in the constitution that everyone will have the right to freedom of trade, profession and occupation. And obviously you can see that they're being involved in the professions which are not considered dignified in the society, especially the scheduled caste. The banking institutions entertaining them, the chances are very low, because while the caste system or people who support the caste system, they say that they can't do their profession and similarly others can't do their profession. So it is a profession based segregation, but you can see that the remuneration for the occupation is also graded inequality, correct? So the amount of value that you add in the good and services, it's not directly it cannot be easily quantified in terms of money, but you can see that in terms of dignity, you would pay a pujari who does puja at your home more for 1 hour for one puja, or a person who comes to clean your toilet every day. So 30 days of work, around 15 hours a month, and 1 hour of job probably twice or thrice in a year. So you can see how the caste system has, you deprived the lower sections of the society of the income generating avenues. At the same time, while tribals can be looked from the point of view of, they can be analyzed from the point of view of caste hierarchy, they can be considered to be different, complete different vertical away from caste society. We should not go into that, but in any particular way that you see, the problem is that the tribal economic system happens to be completely different from the mainstream economic system that we follow. The kind of knowledge that they have is not easily monetizable in our society, which is what is known as traditional knowledge. So slowly and gradually, our appreciation for traditional knowledge is increasing, but not to say that immediately a tribal will not be able to secure the loan. Probably they will not have any idea as to how the formal banking institutions work. So you can see similarly, while financial empowerment is something common everywhere, that you become as soon as you become a part of any kind of but here the independence is not from the family. Here the independence means all kinds of independence that are guaranteed under Article 19. Once you have the money, your ability to do marriage the way you want to do in a village area goes almost equivalent to an upper caste person. You forming an SHG of all the SC people, let's say there are 20 SC men and women forming an SHG or a group, gives you the unity and the strength to counter the upper caste dominance in the society, which earlier was not possible. Does that make sense to everyone? So you can see that on the target group, it has, depending upon the group, so while women target patriarchy, SC ST target caste system. So the one thing that you should realize is that SHG is such a beautiful mechanism that whatever social problem that you see, you just create an SHG, it will automatically act against it. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. Okay. So this is about the impact of SHGs on the target group. But SHGs have been now increasingly used across the globe for the values that it gives to the society. its impact in terms of the values on group and overall scaling of the society. So, for example, once you become the part of an SHG, you become prudent कि इतना तो पैसा बचाना है, नहीं तो मैं ग्रुप से बाहर हो जाऊंगी और अभी तक जो मैंने कंट्रीब्यूट किया है वो सब बेकार हो जाएगा. So financial prudence is one thing. Savings, it's a good value to have for all of us. Correct? Second thing that you get is accountability. As a value, accountability, for example, the loans that you have taken from the rest of your 19 sisters because of their help, it makes you morally, it is like a moral obligation on you to repay it back. So, your obligation towards a formal banking institution is only financial, it's not moral. But your obligation towards an SHG is financial, but on top of that, it is moral obligation to repay the loan back. Because these are the sisters, these are the women you have known since childhood, or maybe when you were married, when a person was married into that village, since then, and you have close either familial ties or caste related ties, so everyone lives in the same vicinity. So while you can deny paying a loan to a bank, you cannot deny paying loan to the people you meet on a daily basis. Is this clear to everyone? Obviously, one thing that India has always lacked because of various social institutions is the ability of Indians to come together and work as a team, unity. I don't have to explain how SHGs would encourage the teamwork, cooperation. How does cooperation comes into play? It's just not as simple as 1920 women contributing 1000 rupees. It is more complicated than that. In some month, two people might seek loan of equal amount. And given the savings that they might have, it would be impossible to extend the loan to two women. Now there the teamwork and cooperation will come into play. There are multiple options. Half can be distributed to each party. Another one can be asked to wait. Third option, one woman can say, why can't we increase this month's saving by putting extra 3000 rupees apart from 1000? So we will be able to cater. So the idea that women will deploy the options itself will build cooperation and cohesion. And also you can see that the ability of the women to just one. The ability of the women to empower themselves and then act as a benchmark for other people. So when I'm talking about Sita, I'm not talking about any imaginary person. There is a real life example that I'm quoting. So the values that Sita carries with herself will act as a diffuser, will have a trickling down effect across the society. Does that make sense to everyone? So do we understand the concept of SHGs now? पालगुना एक बार समझाओ वापस से. What? Just quickly, yeah, whatever we have done.
Okay, sir. So the self-help groups, they are group of people who come together.
Hmm.
There is a mechanism that already exists in society are not able to help them, so they are forced to come together to help themselves.
Hmm.
When we talked about the story of Sita, how like her and many others they come together to help themselves. And India is unique because we try to integrate certain SHGs into the social policy measures.
Hmm.
And SHG is also more believes that microfinancing is more favorable to women. So our governance system wants to incorporate women as SHGs more specifically. There are certain benefits of SHGs, and the different stakeholders that benefit from this first are women, and second are the SHGs, and third are the value systems that
Right.
directly any benefits about it.
Correct. Awesome. So, overall, these are the benefits that we have also yielded in our country, where we have seen that SHGs literally have the power to transform, and it is clearly visible in the human development indicators. It is clearly visible in female feticide rates. It is clearly visible in the savings rate of women. So it is the power of SHGs is now being reflected in government reports. It is now being reflected in the NGOs which work for and try to collect the data about empowerment of the women, everything. So that is why, even for example, the government has initiated multiple programs where the SHGs have been internalized to deliver the goods and services. So, for example, NABARD runs these schemes. There are RBI mandated, the RBI has said that 40% of the loan that will go from any commercial banking channel will go to priority sectors. Now, one of the priority sector is the SHG. So if a bank is lending out 1 crore of rupees, 40 lakhs will have to go to either education or agriculture or SHG. So all of it can go to SHG also. So you can see that everything has been mainstream. So I have in this PPT, I have all those schemes where they have been made an integral part of implementation of government policies. But not to say that everything is hunky-dory about the SHG scene in India. There are a lot of problems that SHG themselves face. One of the problems that SHG face is that when we focused on SHGs were largely used as a vehicle of social transformation only in rural areas. So 90% of the SHGs that you will see that operate in India, or success stories that you will see them coming from the rural area, rural and agriculture sector. Leaving out vast majority of women in urban areas. So while India is urbanizing, SHG remains rural idea in our country. Because so you know that the response of the government is always lagging. So when Indian state started integrating SHGs, incentivizing SHGs, by the same time the women were moving in urban areas along with their families. So it was not well planned. And now we have around 38 to 39, in some people say 40% of the population living in urban areas who are devoid of any kind of SHG help from the government. Now government has started focusing that, but not to say that majority is rural, leaving out urban. Also, you can see that while Sita had a skill, 19 other women did not have any kind of skill. The problem is that while all the women might learn sewing, how to run the machine, they might not be interested to learn that skill. For example, 2 women might want to cook food. 3 of the women might want to, let's say, learn how to make videos and upload it on YouTube, vlogging. There are different kinds of professions and skills that attracts everyone. SHG is bound by its own qualities then. Because if you do not have any kind of skill among the SHG, then how will SHG people acquire a new skill? Now for that you needed a government who can train SHGs into different kinds of skills. But the government of India, when it looked at SHGs, it looked at SHGs from number 1, financial inclusion only, and number 2, as a part to deliver welfare schemes. So while if you are fortunate enough to be a part of SHG where there are 2-3 women who have some good skills, you will end up learning it. But as you know, there can be a scenario, and there are common scenarios where people only have 1 or 2 skills, which is then learned, but most of the people might not be interested in that kind of scene. So the problem that India is facing is the skilling absence of skilling, because the government never looked at SHGs as the vehicle for skill development. And that can act as a way forward as well. That when you go for Skill India, why do you focus on IITs and NITs, and why do you focus on these institutions to and expect them to develop, identify all the SHGs in a particular area, send a questionnaire along, what are the skills that women are expected, and let's say take top 3 voted skills, and then send the experts there to train women at like a 1-month intern program. So one representative from every SHG can be called at district headquarters. They can be trained into that skill, and obviously they have interest. Rest of the things they can learn themselves. You just need an initiation. कोई एक बार बता दे कि ऐसे करना है, फिर तो आप कर ले जाओगे अगर आपको इंटरेस्ट है. उसके बियॉन्ड तो आपको कोई हेल्प नहीं चाहिए. You don't need help beyond some basic initiation. Once you are initiated into an area where you have the interest, then everything can be taken care of. The problem that we see being faced by SHGs in our country is politicization. The problem of student union politics is politicization. The problem now of SHGs is politicization. Politicization in the form of the political parties, political platforms understanding the power of SHGs, but misusing it not to solve these kinds of problems and not to ingrain these kinds of values, but using them for political ideological purposes. So RSS has its own set of civic society platform where they interact with SHGs, but you know that the interaction does not have the motive of women empowerment, social justice, financial prudence. That is secondary. Of course, that's there, but primary is to drive in political ideology, and this is being done by everyone because they have realized that once you capture support of an SHG, you have captured 50 families then. So 50 women being impressed by your thought process gives you a huge inroads into that particular village. So politicization, what it does is that when you or any institution is politicized, if the same political ideology gets into power, they will give you a boost. But then the consequence is that since you are no more apolitical, the other political party, when they will come to power, they will keep you away from the government benefits when they are in power, because they will identify you as an extended arm of opposition. So when they will disburse funds, they will exclude you. So when the government banks, when they will go for microfinancing, they would be clearly instructed not to support all those SHGs being driven by Sehkar Bharati because Congress is in power. Is this clear to everyone? Yeah. Obviously, they face other problems as well. For example, while it is good thing that prudence, accountability, team unity, social empowerment values, the problem is that if one person collapses for any reason, even a genuine reason, all the women's savings go away. That is something that we did not discuss. Because, for example, let's say one person took a loan from an SHG. Now that is a result of savings of last 3 years by all the members. And if, let's say, something bad happens to her, let's say she dies, or maybe she gets terminally ill, now she will not be able to pay back. So all the savings of last 3 years goes zero. And then the women will have to rise up from the ashes again to wait for 3 years to develop that kind of saving. So that makes the SHG program extremely susceptible to one person's misfortune. One person taking the loan and not able to pay it back will lead the whole system to collapse. And that is why recently most of the banks have initiated the bank SHG linkage. What they do is that they do not touch the SHG saving, but the SHG saving is utilized as collateral. And on that collateral, the loans are extended. So that when the loans are not being repaid, you have the savings. It's just that now instead of 20 people, 19 people will repay the loans. So it's like if you were saving 1000 rupees per month, now you will have to save only 1100 rupees per month. But that is something that is very recently been adopted as a policy measure to save the SHGs from the shocks that we are discussing. And obviously any kind of problem, any institution that you study, any phenomena that you study cannot go unimpacted by caste and religion. And so the tendency of the self-help groups to face the caste fracture, to face religion fracture is very evident. I mean, that's also visible in, for example, lack of feminist movement in our country, because their tendency to be divided along caste line. How can a Dalit woman be on the same platform as Brahmin women when their social experience has been so different? And similarly, the problem is, how can women across the caste can form SHGs? The caste will prevent the cross-caste alliance. So while SHG will empower women, they will empower women from a particular caste. In that sense, reinforcing the caste identity into Indian society. कि मतलब they have named themselves as this and this, but ultimately all the women belong to this caste. So obviously it is way better than the previous situation. The problem is that India is finding hard to get itself rid of these realities. So while the women will be empowered, it will not facilitate cross-caste interaction among and different women. Because still our social interaction is being shaped by the caste realities. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah, so you can see that I have written everything here. All the issues and challenges. So it's self-help group, bank linkage program, priority sector lending, Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, Mahila Kisan, Shaktikaran Pariyojana. I have given the examples also of famous case studies where this can be quoted in examples. There are multiple famous examples that you should quote. ऐसा एग्जाम्पल मत लिख देना कि वो एग्जामिनर मोबाइल निकाल के सर्च कर रहा है, अगर वो इतनी जहमत उठाए तो. So way forward, corporate SHG linking, NGOs for functioning, awareness, record keeping and skilling, because they do not have these kinds of accounting skills, so you need a support. Now the government is not going to provide you that support. So who is there to provide you that support? So NGOs now can come to the rescue of the sister CSO concern, which is SHG. So